Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real-Time Enterprise channel on VANTIQ TV, our video and podcast series of interviews with thought leaders and practitioners in digital transformation and the real-time enterprise. My name is Blaine Matthew, and I'm Chief Marketing and Product Officer at VANTIQ. Note that you can reach either myself or the guest by sending a note to realtime@vantic.com, and we will be more than happy to follow up. So we're going to do something a little different today. VANTIQ TV has often featured CIOs from large companies talking about digital transformation and related technologies, and also featured many consultants and gurus on similar topics. But today we will speak to an entrepreneur, someone who has successfully bootstrapped his own real-time business from scratch. We will learn about his journey and some great lessons for both startups and for larger companies that want to act more like a startup. So having said that, joining me today is Jordan Mayerson, co-founder and CEO of Hoplite Power. Prior to founding Hoplite Power, Jordan was an investment banker with Guggenheim Securities and Goldman Sachs, and he also has degrees in finance from the Wharton School and in computer science from the University of Pennsylvania. Thanks for the time, Jordan. We had a great discussion last week in prep for this, and I'm excited to share it with others.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and hopefully what I have to say can help and be insightful to your viewers, and just want to make this an entertaining conversation for everyone involved.
Right, and truly, we look like we're in startup land here. I see you're at a shared office space now that you're sharing with a bunch of other startups in New York City. Is that right?
That is correct. We are based out of the New York Designs Incubator in Long Island City, which is right outside of Manhattan, and its focus is hardware and design-based companies, which is not the easiest thing to do in a city like New York, where everything is more advertising tech or fintech or software. So we're a small community of like-minded individuals who are building hardware-based products and actually physical products as opposed to just software. So we have a lot of electrical engineers here, mechanical, industrial design. We have access to a shop upstairs. We built all of our products to date in our office, so it's a good place for us.
Really interesting. So that's great. So before, I'll leave people in suspense a little bit to find out what Hoplite Power is specifically, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about your story. Obviously, you started out in investment banking, and then somehow you joined a hardware and software startup or founded one.
Sure.
But take us back a little bit through your.
Yeah. So I mean, it's I guess a little less of the typical route into tech and engineering. But out of school, as you mentioned earlier, I had both degrees in computer science and business, and coming out of school, I felt that the business route would be the best way to get into the business world, kind of brush up on some basic needed business skills, just kind of get my feet wet in the so-called real world. So having the background in finance, it made it very accessible to get onto Wall Street in New York, going into banking, and after kind of I was 3.5 years out of school, but I had also done a few internships at a few other financial institutions. Just really felt that it was a good time to take a risk if I ever were to take a risk. At 25, I have really no dependents, no real liabilities. I don't have a family and kids that I would have to, have balance with running a startup, which I hear plenty of people do. I can't understand or imagine how they do that after seeing the problems and difficulties with just running a startup and being single. But it felt like it was the right time. I've always wanted to get back to something a bit more creative and tangible, as opposed to, doing a financial services type role where I'm doing Excel spreadsheets on a daily basis, but I don't see any real connection to the product. And at the end of the day, I'm very attracted to solutions for problems. So as opposed to looking for building a technology that's looking for a problem to solve, the opportunity that we have here at Hoplite Power was something that plagues everyone who owns a smartphone, and with poor battery life. And it's something like, hey, here's a problem that isn't being solved. And maybe there's a better way to go about doing so. And, let's put our monies where our mouth is and actually try to leverage this and kind of exploit this opportunity. I would say my expectation was never to become our essentially lead software engineer, but, push comes to shove, always more interested on the business side, being able to straddle the divides between both tech and business and being able to speak those languages. I mean, you hear a lot of horror stories of entrepreneurs being taken advantage of by VCs, by, people that are in the kind of the investment world. They've never done a financial model. They don't know how to do accounting. A term sheet is foreign to them. And so, I was going to leverage that background to basically have someone that speaks that language on the team. But, lo and behold, we still have said person being able to speak the language and also being able to do the software development, which I think overall, even though it was never my expectation, is a much more interesting story, and is actually leading us to be very lean, such that we don't need to spend extra resources on having a financial person and a marketing person and a software engineer. I mean, hopefully we'll get to the stage where those are good problems to have, and we will be expanding. But for in the bootstrap mode, it's been definitely a much better story to tell potential investors, partners, other stakeholders, that the product was developed in-house, built by hand, 100% by essentially two people. And
okay. So this is a great place
Sure.
to stop. Before we get into the story of the development of the solution, which is really interesting, just bring us all up to speed on what exactly is Hoplite Power, what is it, and what problem does it solve, and sort of what is the business model of the company?
I think that's a good idea, instead of keeping your viewers in suspense of what this company does, because we're not in stealth mode and we're happy to say what we do. Basically, Hoplite Power at its core is providing on-demand smartphone charging solution through a shared distribution model. And basically what that means is that we have engineered a network of kiosks, on-demand, connected. They're about a 1.5 by 1.5 feet that hang on a wall for our current product that we go install into a bar or restaurant. We have a pretty sizable network here in New York City. And basically it is a vending machine for batteries, for smartphone chargers that you can rent on demand for any type of phone that you have, utilize the battery pack, charge your phone, and then like other sharing services, you can actually take it with you from place to place. So you're never really tethered to a physical location. And especially,
so you're not putting your phone in the machine. You're getting a battery out of the machine and connecting it to your phone, carrying it around for some amount of time, and then putting it back.
So it's funny that you mentioned that. That is the reason why we started the business, was that we saw these locker-based mechanisms, which is what most people are used to. And when we tell them what we do, they're like, oh, is it a locker? You put your phone in it. We're like, no, that makes no sense to us. We want you to have your phone on you, and you can take the power with you, as opposed to you putting your device into a locked box and then sitting there for 45 minutes waiting for your phone to charge. Yeah. And I mean, we've heard so many horror stories from companies that have, partnered with these locker systems where the locker breaks down and then someone's phone is stuck inside. And is it the responsibility of the business or the service provider? So we're like, if our thing doesn't work, the worst thing that happens is you just don't get a battery. You still have your phone. We automatically refund money. There's nothing negative. I mean, unfortunately, it's not the best user experience, but you will still maintain your device and have your assets on you. So those lockers were the exact reason why we're doing this mobility type of solution where, within 20 seconds in the swipe of a credit card, you have a fully charged battery pack, fits right behind your phone, put it in your pocket, and you're, walking down the street.
And how many battery packs does a machine hold? How many customers can you serve at once?
So currently our Gen 1 machines are 15 battery packs at a time, and because we leverage a real-time data solution in VANTIQ actually as our backend, we are able to maintain very high level of supply without having to have a large, in-market stock. So we could have had a machine with 45 batteries in it and then just kind of let it run, but we really prioritize having a very small footprint machine so we can get into these businesses. And then we just monitor the levels as as they kind of occur, transactions wise. And if a machine needs to be refilled or serviced, we know that before any of our operating partners would. However, we're actually in the process, and it's very exciting for us, developing our next generation machine, which same exact concept, but much higher capabilities from both a technical and other value-added services. I don't want to get too far in the weeds with that, but that one's going to have a capacity of 48 and a not much larger footprint. So we're really excited with that. We've come up with a very novel internal system that is allowing us to maximize, battery space with minimizing footprint. And that's what we're hopefully going to be rolling out within the next, don't want to put any time frames in stone. So let's say 6 to 12 months.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. And is it a simple pay-per-use model, or do you subscribe to the system, or how does that work?
Hey, a subscription model would be fantastic. We're not there yet, but that would be something that we would be very, interested in if the market, kind of avails itself to that type of model. So as of now, it is a pay-per-use system. You rent a battery, you pay a rental fee, you use the battery, you return it. Pretty simple. Yeah. We're not doing metered pricing where if you use it for 20 minutes, it's X price. Right. If you use it for 45 minutes, it's Y price. If you want it for 30 minutes, it's $2.99. If you want it for 22 hours, it's $2.99. Right. We want to give the customer the choice on how they want to charge their phone.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so thank you. I think everybody's got a pretty good idea about how this works.
Great.
So tell us the story about how this came to be. So you already said how you got the idea, you saw the pain in the market. Obviously, everybody's cell phones are continually dying, and it's an ongoing problem. I see no indication it's going to go away anytime soon. The standard kiosk model where you plug your phone in and leave it attached to a unit is, that's not optimal. Let's just say to be gentle. So you saw this pain in the market, and what did you do? How did you decide to begin to tackle it?
Yeah, so this kind of goes along with the general kind of, concept of how would you potentially do it differently, but because everything in hindsight's very easy to discuss. Yeah. But basically when we first started the business and we raised some, internal capital and some friends and family capital, we were very naive. We were like, we need to build a prototype. We need to show some initial, customer interest. And, if we have those, let's go raise some money. So we actually built let's call it a version 0 prototype that actually is an ugly box that I wish I could throw off a bridge, but I can't. But
it's going to be in the museum someday, in the in the Hoplite Power Museum. So
it's better than what it currently is, because it's a glorified storage unit where we're putting some boxes on top of. But we hired some, consultants, some, engineering contractors to actually build this out. At that time, I was not part of the technical development whatsoever, and was more so focusing on, the business development, more of the things that I thought I'd be working on. But after getting, I'll put it lightly, getting a good lesson from some early angel investors and, hearing that we were just so far off from where we would need to be in order to actually raise some significant capital in terms of traction, we went back to the drawing board and was like, okay, the ultimate idea would be to have a system that would share these batteries, but would also be able to recharge the batteries automatically once they're returned. So our version 0 prototype did that, not very well. And it would have, to get it to market, now that I know much more about manufacturing and DFM and actually getting hardware built, it would have never gone anywhere. However, it did get us into this space in NY Designs, the hardware incubator where we're at. And we kind of, asked ourselves, what features do, we care about as a company that consumers probably don't really care about. And we decided that the ability to self-charge, or the machines to recharge the batteries automatically, was something that was a nice to have, but less so a need to have for proving the market of, will people pay a nominal fee for an on-demand charge, because via an autonomous kiosk, because that's what we were saying. And so we redesigned a system, which is our current system, which is in market, which is more of a traditional vending machine, where there's a queue of batteries on the inside of the machine, a simple coil mechanism, and when you go to rent a battery, the coil spins and drops out a battery, and then you can use it. And so after kind of pivoting away from going full 100% to the idea of having a fully autonomous self-charging kiosk, we designed our current product. It basically took us from January of 2016, where the initial designs were on a physical piece of paper, to December of the same year, where we actually installed our first machines. So we bootstrapped hardware into market in less than a year, which also includes the software aspect, because they're being connected kiosks. There's a UI on the machine. We have a 14-inch touch screen. So, that is very interactive, and that's how the consumer actually utilizes our machine and selects the different options, is on the touch screen. So we had to provide the ability to go from place to place, it all needs to be connected to a centralized, hub of data. And so, we were, given that my partner was more so on the hardware side, I was focusing more so on the electrical and software side. It was, through this process where I was like, okay, gonna have to get my hands a little bit dirtier on the engineering. I actually, throughout the process, taught myself some basic electrical engineering, enough to design and build the circuit board that's powering our machines. I have no real electrical engineering experience, but it was kind of how do we get this done? We have to do it internally. We can't hire anyone to do it. And how can we, show that we are still very strongly supportive of this thesis that people will pay for this.
Now, tell the story of the 75-page schematic. I don't know if you were just about to get to that. But that's quite a inspiring story.
Yeah. So during that process of getting our current system up, we were working with an engineering consultancy firm that was marketing towards startups. And our idea was, okay, we have the hardware kind of focused and designed, the internal mechanisms, the electrical schematics, everything, the physical design of the machine itself. We kind of were like, okay, we're good with that. We'll maintain that. What we really need help with, and what we don't have the capabilities on our team right now, when we're not gonna be able to go hire someone, is building a network infrastructure for on-demand real-time transactions, which was the whole, was a necessity to actually run this business.
Like the nervous system of the system. Yeah.
Exactly. 100%. And so we engaged this company, and, with the expectation that they would be able to provide us with an MVP, minimum viable product type backend, so a few basic APIs that we could integrate into our, the machines, programming, so that they communicate, and we would have a, kind of a pilot ready product that we could then put into market, start showing traction, start generating revenue, actually generating the data to show like, hey, people will pay for this. Unfortunately, there was a bit of miscommunication along the way, and instead of getting an MVP backend and API, library, they provided us with a very comprehensive 75-page PDF of, if they were to build a backend and APIs, this is how they would do it. And so I'm going to, kind of fast forward through some of like the negotiation and some of the, maybe our company's going to die because of this conversation. But lo and behold, we came to a very creative solution in that they, at the time, were partnering with a company called VANTIQ, which, was marketed to us as a IoT automation platform, and that they thought that what we needed to have done, we could build on top of VANTIQ's platform, assuming that we got a little bit of training and got up to speed on how the platform works and how to develop on top of it. And they were right. I mean,
so when you say we could build it with VANTIQ, you don't mean that company that wrote the 75-page.
No.
They're
Sorry.
basically saying, here, yes. VANTIQ's fairly easy to learn. You go ahead and do it yourself, right?
Yes. Yeah. And at that point, I mean, while it's not the ideal outcome, and we were hoping that they were going to be actually working in kind of parallel, that they would be building this, and we can focus on like everything on the machine side, software and hardware. We then, realized that, in addition to the hardware and the software on the machine, we now have to build the entire back end and the whole networking infrastructure. But in August of 2016 was when we got introduced to VANTIQ and kind of, went through a few tutorials and intro and training session. The end of December, like I said earlier, we had product in market, and we had a full backend API library that I, single-handedly developed in about a 3.5-month span, was able to integrate it into our front end and because we were running on our current machines a Java-based web app. I was confident enough to program in Java, so I was like, you know what? If I can get the two talking to one another, maybe we have something here. And now it's been over a year and a half later. We're still using the same exact backend. As we add more machines, it's at a click of a button. New machine comes online. New machine is then added to our system. It's been inherently scalable. We don't have to look to deploy or redeploy new servers or expand our cloud systems, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And so it allows us to actually increase and scale the network in real time because we can easily add and onboard any machine in about, I would say 5 to 10 minutes. And so, I mean, we've definitely made improvements over time, and we see some initial errors that weren't necessarily debugged. But given the fact that I can go onto a web portal, change the API, and then save it and fix any error pretty much in real time, It just made it very simple, or I won't say simple. It made it a lot easier to actually roll this out, because I know a lot of startups are especially ones where software isn't necessarily their core focus or it's a complementary aspect of it, will go and outsource the development. And while that may, get you a product very quickly and very good looking, without having the technical capabilities on staff and in-house, to make any changes is, kind of cumbersome, could be costly, could be outside the scope of an initial project. Who then maintains it going forward? Who maintains ownership? Something goes wrong. I can't tell you how many times in the middle of the night I've woken up, seen an error on the system, logged onto my computer, fixed the API, and then went back to sleep. And it's like, okay, it's fixed. And not have to sweat more, are my developers in, Bangalore gonna answer the phone, or, hopefully I can get in touch with this developer, yada, yada, yada. It's, we're, self-determination type of startup where we're trying to minimize, having any technology that's really developed or, built by somebody else such that we don't know how to modify moving forward. So that was a huge benefit that at the time kind of, didn't dawn on us until we were actually operating a, multi-machine system 24/7 essentially. But, I mean, at this point we've had thousands of paid rentals, thousands of unique customers, multiple users, very positive feedback from our partner locations. And, it was all based on the idea that, hey, people will pay for a charge if they need it, people pay for convenience. And we built these machines, we tested them, we go into a business and literally put it on the wall, walk away. And within a few hours, we usually have our first rental because it's intuitive, people can figure it out. And it's, very, rewarding to see utilization in real time. I can go onto a portal and be like, there was a rental. This guy rented it for the fourth time. And seeing that come in, on a, pretty much instantaneous basis from any machine in our network.
Now, when you release your next gen product, will you have to redo the back end from scratch, or will you be able to reuse a lot of what you already created? How difficult do you anticipate that will be?
I have already, it's not going to be too difficult in that it's already primarily been built. I've been spending a lot of time behind the scenes getting the next version up and running. I would say that it's basically 75% of our current system, right. and having the current system made it very easy to, quickly develop the next kind of iteration. Mm-hmm. And because we have the ability to bifurcate our, data between, kind of a platform 1 and platform 2, all on the same, tech background, we can, keep them completely separate, actually run both networks at the exact same time. And, a lot of the things that we learned from the first round of development, we leveraged for the second round, but due to more of the technical complexity of the new machine, the ability to self-recharge, larger capacity, that there was a lot more data that we needed to keep track of. And, the APIs were a little bit more robust and lengthy in terms of its development, but we made a concerted effort to kind of, because we know how the old machines ran and know how the new machines are going to, how they differ, we actually basically pre-built the back end. And now we're actually going through the process of developing the UI and the application for the next machine, and, leveraging the new kind of platform as we speak. And I think that, we'll put it to you this way. The first development cycle probably took me about 3 months, learning the system, getting stuff developed. That was to, like a initial rollout. And then there was a lot of, debugging along the way. The second back end, I think I did in the APIs and, databases, I specified probably in about a 2.5 week sprint.
Wow.
Because I know what I needed. I knew what I needed to change. And then, the nice thing is with the platforms that we're using is that we have we're building it all on a dev platform. And so I can test everything and debug in real time as well. So it's not like, let me run this and then, I have to wait until we actually have a network up to debug this. I can simulate data and start seeing how these things work, where they break, what needs to be changed. And we're already going through that process. So hopefully, we're probably within the next month, hopefully going to have a fully working demo prototype of our next machine with all the bells and whistles, fully, functional, batteries, take payment, all that. We are, working with a few manufacturing partners and engineering consultants to, help get it manufactured. But we're in the process of tying all those bits and pieces together on a, fully workable next version.
Very cool. And it sounds like you do intend to run the V1 system and the next gen system at the same time, at least for some time.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. It's, what's bad about passive revenue? The machines run, they still function perfectly well. People use them on a daily basis. We see that utilization. And until we were in a position to roll out our next version of the machines into this same market, there's no reason to remove them. Additionally, for our next machine, we're going after we're kind of moving slightly away from the bar restaurant market and targeting larger venues, amusement parks, sports stadiums, where there's a lot of people, a lot of foot traffic. People are there to be entertained. The last thing they want to do is being tethered up in the, concession somewhere. So given that we're focusing on a different kind of location network, they're not gonna, for the near future, there's not gonna be a lot of potential, I don't want to say cross-contamination, but they're gonna operate in kind of different spheres of hopefully, eventually we'll get to the point where we can phase out the Gen 1s and, bring in the newer system, because it's going to be actually professionally manufactured, not in our office. But yeah, for the time being, until the next one is actually up and running, there's no reason to remove that. We're actually looking to expand. We have a few machines ready to go in our office that need nice homes. So yeah, we're looking to expand a few more on the current network, and then we're just going to let them ride.
Well, it's really exciting to hear the story, of obviously the hardware development is really interesting. And I know a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast are probably more on the software side, but it's always interesting, as you said, to hear the hardware side. On the software side, it's also interesting that you could move so quickly and basically take what you've got in Gen 1, almost build a digital twin of Gen 2, run it in simulation, make sure it all works. And then when you're ready to go live, you can bring that live in real time and keep Gen 1 running. And with, not years of work with a team of developers, but weeks of work with you.
Pretty much
amazing. Not that you don't look like a really smart guy, I'm sure you are, but that is still pretty impressive.
Well, I am working very well with a few interns that are key to this development.
The interns now, yes, good for you.
Divide and conquer. They'll be working on X, Y, Z. I'll be doing A, B, C, and then we integrate, and then it works, and then it's like great. Cool. But actually, the funny thing is, from our first machine to our second machine, the only consistent tech stack aspect is VANTIQ, and is the backend, because we're going from a Java-based web app to a Python-based web app, and the firmware that we've built for our new machine and all the other modules we're communicating over TCP/IP as opposed to serial. So it's actually a different tech stack, and also the way that we're integrating our APIs, we're going from like a Java SDK, which makes it very easy to integrate, to straight HTTP REST calls. So we're actually going as a more traditional API calling protocol. And once we kind of figured out how to best communicate with our backend via REST, it's like, okay, Python to Java, or Java to Python, no big deal. We have to modify how it's being called, but once we figured that out, it's now just like off to the races. So, the system to the user is going to be exactly the same, more or less, from a high level perspective. Right. But the underlying tech is different languages, different modules, different payment software, and different payment hardware. It's a completely it's a really separate system, but because we know how the back end works and how that integrates and how that data is communicated and stored, we're not sweating having to build a back end, so we can focus solely on the new application and any of the nuances that arise from developing with a newer tech stack, because we know that when we start to integrate the back end, it's going to work as expected. And I started doing that this week, and it's working as expected, which is great.
Glad to hear it. Well, that's great. So maybe I'll combine the next two questions into one, but
sure.
What was the hardest part of getting your company this far? And maybe it's related to, if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently? Maybe those are the same. Maybe those are different questions, actually.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Probably, the hardest thing, and it was, kind of an uphill battle based on more so the type of business that we chose to pursue, is, there's an adage in like the hardware space that hardware is hard. And it's true, because, not only do you have the capital costs required for research and development and actually building physical product plus building out a team, most investors are kind of used to a software-based return curve where you can put in a little bit of money, up front, and you bring on a few people, you launch some servers, and hey, if you go from 100 users to 100 million, you just need to kind of glossing over a lot, but it's a lot easier to scale a software business, and the investment community, at least in New York, is still very used to that type of risk profile and that kind of use of capital. So when we go to places and say, hey, we need this type of money to build machines because the machines cost $2,000, $3,000 to build, they turn around and it's like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. And we're like, do you know how much a real vending machine costs? Like, that's probably like $30,000. Like, and I'm just saying too. So it's been, so, you know, probably the hardest thing has been, you know, getting a product in, is, you know, the bootstrapping aspect is getting product into market where we have good feedback from customers that they want to use it. We have feedback from, you know, businesses that they like this problem to be solved. And then when we go to, you know, try to raise a bit more capital to, you know, expand, to initially launch the business, it was, you know, it was kind of a, oh, show us, we want to see more traction and growth. And we're like, how do we show traction if we can't build product to put into market to show the traction that you want to see? So the question for us was, how do we get into market bootstrapped with very limited investment while having all the features, or more or less most of the features that we want to be able to provide or market ourselves. You know, I think that's where, you know, that kind of came, me becoming more of an engineer kind of came out of that, was we need to get this to market. I have a software background. I hadn't touched Java in probably 5 years. And now that we're doing Python, I haven't touched that in about 8 since school, but it's kind of like riding a bike to an extent, and, you know, just pick it up and, like, you know, learn it and back to the development. So I think
what's one thing you would do differently?
First thing I would do I would have said, bloody hell to prototype zero. You know, basically realizing now is that the most important thing is, you know, speed to market with as analogous of a final product as possible. So when we cut out the capability of doing self-charging, that allowed us to really move quickly because we didn't have to design our own battery pack. We white labeled and sourced directly from manufacturers overseas. We didn't have to, you know, figure out, you know, complex charging protocols and, you know, battery management and power issues there. It's, you know, a very simple system. And if you look inside one of our kiosks, it's a very, you know, it's a pretty simple system, to be honest with you. And it's really more or less the distribution that is the value add. It's, you know, they're battery packs. You know, we're not really creating new tech here. It's the access and the convenience that we're providing, and the reassuring thoughts that, you know, come with, hey, if my phone dies, I can easily get something to call an Uber home, or, you know, to text my friend that I'm okay. Because, you know, we have a tendency to forget that without the hardware, without the phone, all the really cool stuff that our phones do would be useless. And so that would be the, you know, if I were to kind of do it again, it'd be, how do I get quicker to market and focus less on proving and building out the full tech prototype? Because we could have easily jumped to our current machine without much loss, and could have done a lot quicker because we built it in-house. We didn't hire contractors to do it. You know, like, when we controlled our own destiny, and we ended up building, you know, my partner Nick and I, we ended up building a much more robust professional product than the engineering consultants we hired to do the first one in the first place. So, you know, kind of the need for expertise. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people this day and age are really like, oh, if someone else can do it, let me hire them, or it's like, you know what, if you're an entrepreneur, you better be able to kind of leverage your own skill set other than, you know, being a business person or, you know, finance guy. If you're not doing some of the development yourself or a key member, it doesn't seem like there's much of like the connection to being an entrepreneur that you're really putting in the time and effort. So, I mean, I don't want to, you know, bash anybody else's, you know, strategies or whatnot. But for us, we always were very keen on keeping the tech in-house, being able to say, hey, we developed this. We're not leveraging, you know, relying on other software providers or other, you know, companies to do this for us. We're doing it essentially ourselves. And it's, you know, worked pretty well to date.
Very cool. All right, changing gears entirely. I always give guests the chance to call bullshit on some aspect of conventional wisdom, maybe where the gurus are saying,
Sure.
business or tech gurus are saying X, you think it's actually Y. What's your call BS moment here?
So I think this also, coming from the finance side of things, I kind of understand that world and I know people in it. I know how capital's put to use. I mean, when I was in my banking days, I was working on, billion-dollar transactions and whatnot. So I speak the language. It's not something that is, over my head. VCs need to stop marketing themselves as, oh, we invest in, the team, or we invest in any stage, because every guy that I've gone to that says that is, oh no, you're too early. Then how can you be any stage if we're always too early, or it's, not the right, it's like, if you were to do an analysis of, multiple VC kind of copyrights, it's all the same, like regurgitated script. I have a bunch of friends in VC, so like it's not like I don't have people in this, in this community.
You had a bunch of friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But it's more so. I wish there was just a bit more of and this will never happen because it just won't. But like, hey, we invest in X, Y, and Z, and there are a few that do that. X, Y, and Z companies at this stage or later. If you don't meet those qualifications, don't talk to us. Or like, we wish you the best of luck, but that's not our profile. It's the ones that like say, oh, we invest in teams, not ideas. We invest in, understood, blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know what? You didn't have anything better to write on your website.
All right. Wow. That sounds very visceral to you. We'll let you back down off that one a little bit. And to wrap it up, take us through, and you've already touched on so many of them, but a couple of key takeaways or tips for entrepreneurs or business people that are trying to drive, some innovation, a real-time transformation in the world of business in a market.
Sure.
What tips do you have?
Sure. I would say, it's a dual-edged sword because there's a lot of baloney out there. Don't get me wrong. So you're going to have to do your homework, but before, really trying to, leverage, well, I guess it's two things. Let me bifurcate between tech side and business side. On the tech side, I would say look to see if there's some other solutions out there that you can leverage that would help you get to market faster. Because if getting to market fast is the ultimate goal, improving your product, whether it be hardware or software, then you need to get something built. Most of your early adopters are not going to be looking under the hood of what you have built. So if you can leverage other technologies or platforms, for us, example, we didn't want to build a API and database platform from scratch. Those exist. Why not leverage one that's already, debugged and, a lot better than what we could ever build internally? So that's one other area that we can kind of de-risk, and then we can focus on the things that, you have to develop.
Right.
So, I would say, on the one hand, look for, spend some time trying to figure out what can be leveraged off the shelf, or if there's certain things that, would require some still development, but not full from the ground up. And two, I'm never a fan of, outsourcing tech, especially if you're looking to do a tech product. You can't really say you're a tech startup if you're, outsourcing everything, but you're more of just, a business, or, like there are plenty of businesses that operate like that, and it's great. But I don't want people to kind of get, caught up in the fact that, oh, well, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm not really doing anything. On the second side, so on more of the business side, don't waste your money on efficiency tools until you really need to use them. There's a lot of tools out there for communicating, for accounting, for collaboration, for time management, for pretty much anything that a business does. And a lot of people are very quick to pay for, of all things, convenience, which is what I market our company as. But, as an entrepreneur just starting up, it's not easy. You got to put in the sweat equity. So, don't be paying for a CRM until like your Excel spreadsheet of customers and clients exceeds, your ability to function. And you need the CRM. One thing that I would recommend spending money on is a good accounting software. I mean, I'm using QuickBooks, and I keep track of all of our finances, but I do have a background in finance, so it's hard for me to kind of separate those two. But there's money will go by very, very, very quickly. So spend every dollar wisely, more or less. So if there's certain things that there are less sexy tools, like you have to use Excel over some cool newfangled product, use Excel. Don't go out and pay for all these expensive things so it looks nicer. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get the product out, and the product is going to hopefully speak more than the fancy, CRM templates you develop.
Yeah. Well, and I think that advice applies not only to startups, but to larger organizations. Their agility gets reduced. They get bogged down in all the tools, all the resources, everything that they could do.
Yeah.
They could launch this new product and integrate the system into SAP in 6 months, or they could just get it out there, right?
Right.
And keep it simple. And
Right.
more MVP oriented, more agile, and develop things rapidly. And so I think your advice absolutely applies to large organizations as well.
Yeah, I mean, and we got to a point, I'm just using my company as an example, where we were spending more time talking about the tools and figuring out how to use the tools than just doing the work and, doing what our business is. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are definitely certain things that make life a lot easier. We use communication, which makes it great. We use Dropbox, great. Google Docs, great, basic stuff. But, if you're getting into these crazy task trackers and you're a team of 4 people, if you can't communicate with your team and know what people are doing, you probably have bigger problems than, having to use a task tracker, or, that type of stuff. So, there's definitely goods, there's definitely bad. I would definitely say try not to spend all your time assessing tools. And if you find one that you like, just go with it, because the next one out there is probably not going to be materially that much better.
That's good advice. Well, that wraps it. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us today. Really enjoyable conversation.
Appreciate it. No, this was fantastic. And it was a great opportunity to re-engage and, talk to you guys again. And, hope to talk to you guys soon.
Absolutely. And for those interested in hearing more about Hoplite Power, check out hoplitepower.com. That's HOPLITE power.com. And if you are in the New York City area, keep your eyes open for one of the kiosks. Hopefully a Gen 2 kiosk in the not too distant future.
Hopefully. That's what we'd all be happy about that.
You bet. And of course, you can reach out to me anytime at realtime@vantic.com. If you would like to subscribe to the podcast version of the Real Time Enterprise, search for the Real Time Enterprise on iTunes or SoundCloud. And if you are already listening to the podcast version of the Real Time Enterprise, please leave a rating or comment and let us know how you are enjoying the show.